Thank you, Sarah, for reminding me to record. A brief repeat. I was not a great student. I didn't own the terms diction and syntax. Now I do. And I want you to own them as well because they're really useful in your creative writing. So I better put it there again. I put in the chat a link, and I will have to put it in the comments in the YouTube channel for those of you watching the recording. I just really like this article that is talking about syntax because I hadn't really thought about the way that syntax can be a setting for your writing, and that in the rhythms and the ways that you combine words after you've made those really careful word choices, which is diction, that way that you put them in a sentence and then put those sentences together to create syntax actually can create mood or an environment for your writing itself. And I know for Jess, she's writing a kind of creepy story. It's not a horror story, but it's scary. And her word choices that she's doing in her work right now, and the way she's putting them together create that kind of feeling of just prickly on your spine while you're reading it. And so think of syntax as one more tool that you have to create a setting, but a setting that isn't physical and isn't necessarily that second part of setting that we talk about so much, the sensory details that happen in setting. So I give you a little article to look at to review your syntax and diction. All the stuff in the announcement I put for 510, I think is really useful. Just have seen it before because that's where we met, was in 510. And then also the reading, of course. I mean, Dunkelberg is such a great resource. So I hope that you're reading the text because it's really okay. Any questions for me? Oh, and let me just say one more thing because I was really waffly. So I think in previous, Jess was with me also, this is a year and a half, 2 years ago, when 510 has just been struggling because it's an old class. And so they've been doing these little micro adjustments to it. And I've decided that in the years since I've taught it, they must have changed the way they did the rubrics because they keep clarifying that you can write in any genre. And it used to be you had to write in the genre that you were studying. And I think it's useful to do that. I mean, I think the choice to write in the genre that you're then reading in your two chosen texts is helpful because you can take one-for-one comparisons and do it in your writing. But you'll see I put up a video announcement where I said, you know what, just write whatever you're going to write because I want you to be practicing what you're interested in. I'm not as qualified to comment on poetry, and I'm not as qualified to comment on screenwriting, but I'll help you as much as I can. So do what you're going to do. Take the two texts you've chosen and use them, and we will make it work. Okay, I'm so excited about what I have for us to write from today. You guys ready to write?
Yes.
Few of you will recognize this. I got this from my friend Kelly Tanner Backenroth, who on September 7th had the gorgeous 6.7 pounds Eva. And so she's nowhere near to do a guest spot with us because she's busy feeding somebody who wants to eat like every 3 minutes. But she taught me this improv writing prompt. And what we're going to do, and I'm going to use this time, can you see the book? It's kind of glary. It's called
The Mountain and the Sea.
It's called The Mountain and the Sea. And for those of you on the Slack channel, you'll see that I actually put this up because it's one of the 10 most anticipated fictions of this fall. And this is my advanced reader copy because I know the author and I have to read it. We're having him in conversation with Birch Bark Editing on October 18th. If you ever, like, if you want to hear him talk or have questions for him, his book comes out on my birthday, which is awesome. And so I'm going to use it to pull words from. And what happens in this improv writing prompt, and I'm going to remember this time. Last time I started this and I didn't give words. When I get you started, I have some words for you to begin with. And those words will be, it was fun being. And you can use your character, or if you're doing nonfiction writing, you can use yourself. And you can change that. Like if you're writing something right now and you already have a sentence to begin with, you don't have to start with it was fun being. That's just a way to get you going. And then I'm going to pop in, say, every 20 seconds and throw you a word. Like if I did it right now, I would have thrown you shape. So I'm going to throw you a word from here and we'll just see where it goes. And the reason why I think this is perfect when we're talking about diction and syntax is we can be so careful choosing what word we're using and how we're putting it together. But if I throw words at you, you'll be amazed to see what your brain does. So you ready to play? Questions? Katey, do you understand how it works?
Ah, wait, so this is like when a therapist says a word and then you have to like say the first word that comes to mind. Is that?
Um, though I probably need it, I've never been to a therapist, but what happens is you'll be writing, like you could say, it was fun being a flower on the wall at the high school dance. And then I throw shape. You go, I wonder what shape I took. Was I a peony? Was I a rose? So you take the word and incorporate the word I throw into your writing, not one that you respond to from it, but the actual word. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh. So I form a sentence with the word that you give us or the
Yeah,
concept of the word.
or if you're going along, because you'll be surprised how fast they come. There's Sarah just going, I can't believe we're doing this one. If you're going along in your sentence and it will work in your sentence, then just drop it into the sentence you're already writing, you know. And what I'll do is I'll keep putting them in the chat. So if you feel like you missed the word, you'll be able to reference the chat to see which one it was. You don't have to get everyone in there. It's just fun to see what will happen. You're going to love this, I think. I mean, look at Sarah. You're going to hate love this because it's hard to do, but it's okay. And I'm going to type in the chat. It was fun being. Again, you do not have to use this prompt, but if you want to start with that, you can. I'm going to get you started writing, and in 20 seconds, I'm going to come in with the first word. Are you ready? Okay, on your marks, get set, right. First word is clumsy. Clumsy. Argue. Argue. Sequence. Sequence. Bloated. Bloated. Autopsy. Autopsy. Scroll. Mutiny. Mutiny. perimeter, perimeter. Intonation, intonation. Weakly, as in not strong, weakly. And with just a minute left, I'll give you your last word and you can write it out for a minute. Rude, rude. Okay, do your best to wrap things up. Okay, everybody. What'd you think? Was it hard?
They were
Yes.
fast.
I actually slowed down. After the first three, I was like 20 seconds is too fast. So I started doing 30 seconds, which I hope helped. First, I'd love to hear a few of your impressions. Like what happened in your head when you got thrown, say, mutiny? You know, I mean, because surely that wasn't the direction your writing was going, right?
I think I get on a roll and think what I'm going to say next, and then you throw in autopsy. Autopsy, that doesn't work for my little,
Right?
so it makes you redirect.
Yeah.
It's funny because autopsy actually worked for me, but mutiny did not.
It's weird how sometimes like the weirdest words end up being exactly what you need, and then it's fun.
Yeah. And what I think is one of the most fun things that comes out of being thrown words like this is that you're like, well, that doesn't fit my storyline, but I can use it as figurative language. Like I can say, you know, my emotions were a mutiny or whatever. But that forces you to take a word you would never have used in that way. And you're like, well, I have to fit it in somehow and just keep on going. And it's so fun to see what happens to the writing here. And what we'll do is we're going to hear whoever wants to share. And then the next writing prompt is taking your favorite sentence from what you wrote now and just writing forward from there without being thrown stuff. So be thinking about what your favorite sentence is as we go ahead and hear what people wrote. Does anybody want to go first?
Go first.
Thanks, Jonathan.
It was fun finally being out of court. The only thing worse than going through a divorce court was having a clumsy lawyer. You think they would argue the facts, but the whole court just treats people like a sequence of numbers, like a product on a conveyor belt. Get them in, get them out. I get that the justice system is bloated, but this is just not right. Explains why so many failed marriages end with someone on an autopsy table. I was scrolling through documents, and for what? No one cares. I wish just one of these lawyers would mutiny against the system and do the right thing. Are there souls in a prison and their common decency just can't leave the perimeter? From my intimation, that's the only answer. I understand why weakling men just give up and fill the garages with CO2 than give anybody else a cent of their money. It's hard to know who steals from you more, the spouse or the lawyer. When you call them out on it, they call you rude. But you can't be polite to a parasite. Hell is filled with lawyers for a reason.
Wow.
The weird thing is, it started positive, but the more when you started giving words like bloated and autopsy, then it just started getting sad. I didn't mean for that to happen.
Yeah, so look what happens with diction, right? Because I threw you those kinds of words. And in fact, to go along with that really briefly, and then let's hear what you thought about Jonathan's work, but I had to stop moving. I was moving through the book. I usually start in the beginning and go to the end. I had to stop because I haven't finished reading the book, and the nature of the words I was finding was starting to give away how the story was going. So I went back to the beginning and started over. In the beginning, I think is way, it's setting up a really dark scene. And I think you noticed that, Jonathan. So thoughts from y'all about Jonathan's writing?
Wow, that was really good. It worked out really well.
I think the theme of divorce from the very get-go like kind of fit the tone of the words that were given. So it was clever.
Yeah, all the words seemed to work for you. They were good. That was really well done.
I loved what you did. I was anticipating you coming for perimeter. So because I was looking at them in the chat to see where you were going next and enjoying the anticipation of what was going to happen. And when you said that they had souls, but maybe they couldn't leave the perimeter, I was like, clever. And then ending with, but you can't be polite to a parasite. I felt like parasite emerged out of the nature of all the words behind it. And just goes to show you the way that this article that I put up will talk to you about creating a setting with your syntax, but you're creating it with your diction too, because the negative nature of the words I threw created what you wrote, right?
Thank you. I want to say thank you for your comments.
Yeah, good job. Well, who wants to follow that? Okay, Sarah.
It was fun being in the middle of the living room dancing to the Reba song, Is There Life Out There? But as life would have it, Cassie tripped clumsily over the brush laying on the floor. Brittany, the 7-year-old, started to argue that she hadn't put the brush there. Regardless of the sequence of events, Cassie ended up on the floor, the carpet burning her knee as she skidded across the bloated fibers of the carpet. Darcy burst out laughing, causing everyone else to laugh too, kind of like the uncomfortable laugh that might happen or might come out in the middle of an autopsy if you're avoiding the vomit in your throat. Cassie got up and started to scroll through other songs, picking Petra's The Rock Cries Out. As the bass started to vibrate, the younger kids started to mutiny against the adults' music. Brittany pushed 4-year-old Vaughn out of the way to get to the CD player. He landed outside the perimeter of the carpet, right on the hard cold tile of the dining room. With spiteful intonation, he began screaming, "I hate you," at his beloved sister. She looked at his weakly form there on the floor and felt immediate guilt for having pushed him. Cassie went over and pulled him up. "Brittany, don't be rude. You left the brush out, making me fall, then pushed your brother. You have no idea how lucky you have it." Darcy walked over, ready to make the peace, whether forcefully or not.
Nice.
Well done.
Great. Thoughts from people?
Yeah, my absolute favorite sentence was what you did with autopsy, how you laughed to just hold back to the vomit. Because I think we've all been in situations where like something like that is not appropriate, but you do it just to cope with how uncomfortable you feel.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What else?
I could just picture everything, especially when you worked in bloated with the carpet. I instantly was like shag carpet, or like a really plush carpet. That was clever. That stuck out to me.
Yeah, that bloated word was used really well. That was really good.
I think it's worth putting some mental attention to the kind of double duty carpet did for you in the whole thing, because it was the perimeter, it was the bloated, and just to ask everybody to think of the way that you can have things in your setting that will do work for you that create the larger emotional or environmental setting of your work. And carpet does it for Sarah in this place, especially because we all, I mean, I assume we all have sort of a mixed relationship with carpet, because carpet's both gross and soft. And so it's just doing a lot for you in there. And I marked down the same thing everybody else said. I felt like those were the two best points in a really good excerpt. Cassie's making it. Good job. Who wants to go next?
I can go really quick, and then I have to hop off because I have somebody come in to look at some stuff that I need help with on my house. So
Yeah.
If we have just a minute, I'll run through mine. Okay, I did miss a word. See if you can catch the word I missed.
I can. I have them listed.
It was fun being 6 years old, gliding through the air on a rope swing, flying high, my feet positioned to the sky, my clumsy stride to the fence line, climbing the chain link to get away from the words that burned. As my parents argued, the same sequence of events, that's my alarm, would play out each Saturday. The bloated words hung heavy in the air. I would later learn no autopsy could diagnose the slow death my mother faced, the damage like a cancer that scrolled through organs, consuming them. Her heart's perimeter breached by angry intonation, she weakly fought back in quiet ums and I'm sorries. No rude words could leave her lips. She was soft and pliable, like new lamb fleece, folding and collapsing until he consumed her.
You have a lot of awesome imagery in there.
Thank you.
I like how
Yes.
you used so much of the vocabulary figuratively. That's what I got caught up on, because I wanted to try to use them literally. But yeah, it was a lot of really good figurative language, and it worked really well.
Thank you.
I really like the tonal shift, because when you say like it was fun being 6 years old again, you think it's gonna be happy, then you shift to her mother dying. So, but it didn't
Yeah.
feel like it came out of nowhere. So I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So you skipped mutiny, and
I did.
I love if your mom had been able to mutiny, it wouldn't have happened, right? So almost
Yeah.
in its absence, it was present. And I think you really, as Jonathan said, you balanced on what it means to be 6, which means that you don't fully embrace all the awful that's happening, but you're aware of it and you're trying to get away from it. And so none of it was too much. You weren't too surprised. You weren't, when you took us to climbing over the was it chain link fence to get away, we're all like, oh, and then we know where you're going to go from there, but none of it is too abrupt, is what I'm trying to say. It all flowed together out of what you wrote. And amazing. I agree with Katey. Tons of figurative language. It's kind of your thing. And you
Yeah.
did it really well.
Thank you.
But everybody, right before Jess goes, and I said, come anyway, even though you have to go. So this is me. the thing about it is that figurative language, would you agree with me that every time she asked us to see the world in a new way with one of those words, we're like, oh yeah, right? So look at the power of figurative language. And it's one of the reasons we do this exercise, because you feel like you're overdoing it when you're writing it and then you aren't. So I encourage you to keep pushing it. Jonathan, same thing. He had tons of figurative language.
Yeah,
Good luck with your citing, Jess. Thank you for joining us.
thank you. I appreciate it. It was good to see you guys. Hopefully I can pop back in another weekend.
Yeah, great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
Excuse me. So, Katey or Kay, do either of you want to read?
No, thanks.
Well, I would like to say no, because after hearing those, I'm like, oh, mine is not figurative at all. I just used every word there as it is. It
Me
was like,
too.
No,
I'm gonna-
let me take a moment with you both to encourage you either way. Reading is such an important part of what we do, and you were in one of the first classes at SNHU. You witnessed Jess is in her last semester of the MFA program. Jonathan took 529 2 terms ago, right? And Sarah, oh gosh, you were with Jonathan, weren't you? Like 2 terms ago, and you're in the MFA program now. And so I just want to say, hey, look, we get better, right? I mean, so don't be embarrassed by what you're writing now. It gives you a sense of what other people are doing. And then you're like, oh, I already know how I would do this differently given the opportunity.
right.
So
right.
it's a great moment.
Well, you'll see how
Okay, let's hear
literal I took every single word.
it. Yeah, well, I love it. Let's hear it.
Okay, it was fun being a cheerleader, but she was a relatively clumsy girl. You might argue that she shouldn't have been captain, but she was the one who knew the sequences and moves, so they voted for her. Her first game came, and she was so bloated from all the soda she drank that she could hardly fit into her costume. It was the day after her dad's autopsy, and they had found no definitive answer as to why he died. She scrolled through Google to find the possible causes of his death. And she was so distracted that some of the other cheerleaders were considering mutiny, taking away her captaincy. Out of the perimeter of her eyes, she could see them conspiring, and she could tell by the intonation of their words that they were something done with her. She weakly agreed she needed some time off, although she thought they were rude in kicking her out. But for the time, it was fun being a cheerleader.
That was awesome.
Big.
You like wrapped it up all
Sure.
nicely and it totally flowed like a story.
Yeah, naturally.
Yeah.
And I feel so bad for her. Her dad is dead and the cheerleaders are mean.
And it kind of felt, from what we've heard of cheerleaders, it felt right?
Yeah.
Because they're just mean girls.
Yeah, it worked.
Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
it was working really well until you said autopsy. No, the bloated. The bloated is what? Bloated.
I actually like
That-
the
and
way
in
you use
retrospect-
bloated.
Huh?
I actually like the way you use bloated because I can relate to feeling like that.
Yeah.
You know, there are times when I haven't been able to eat something, so I just grab soda or whatever and just chug it down and move on. Then I feel terrible afterwards. So
Yeah.
I actually related to that.
Especially for a cheerleader.
Right.
I could have, like hearing everybody else's, I could have said something along the lines of she had a bloated opinion of herself or something like that, like used it a little bit more,
That might have seemed more forced.
maybe.
The way you
Right.
did it, it just flowed.
But as you are editing, like if you took these same words and went back to edit, you might find yourself, going into her interior and picturing, say, her father's bloated body in an autopsy or something, right? And then you can
Mhm.
really take us to the painful place she's in, that she's hiding from all of her peers. And an autopsy is late enough after a death that maybe they would expect her to be going on. I don't know. So bringing that autopsy in changed your whole story, didn't it? It really changed the stakes and made it much more serious. So yeah, that was great. And so just when you think that you don't have something because you hear the way other people write, you often do. So don't sell yourself short. That turned out really well. Cheerleaders are rich proving ground.
That's true.
Katey, are you sure you don't want to go this time?
Can.
You
I
don't
actually
have to.
didn't. Like I said, I was using them very literally, so I actually didn't end up using pretty much most of the words at the end. But now I have a better idea of how this task works, so
Okay.
that's cool. Let's see. It was fun being the only one who didn't know. They say ignorance is bliss. I was innocent in my clumsy efforts to make sense of things until a peculiar sequence of events revealed the truth by chance. As it turned out, the host of the party wasn't waiting to make his grand entrance while I was spinning between dancing couples and shuffling to the punch bowl. His cold, bloated cadaver lay on the autopsy table. We twirled around the perimeter of the dance hall in his honor. Cheers to Mr. Henry. May he rest in peace.
What did you
Nice.
like about that?
Okay.
I liked it.
Thank you. Thank you.
What
I
do you
really
guys-
wanted to use mutiny, but I had no idea how to put mutiny in there.
I like your narrative voice. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not using figurative words very well right now but it gave a unique feel to it. Like removed, but there. I don't know. But I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and if I could hop in really quick to say, I think what you're hearing, Sarah, was she had these amazing verbs all the way through it. People were twirling and I just wrote verbs. And then an exclamation mark. You had all these great verbs, and so we knew that there was this vibrant character who was having a great time at this party, but a question in the back of her mind, right? Or their mind. I don't know. I guess twirling, I take that as being girl more, but I'm being very genderist or whatever they call it these days. But yeah, so you showed us what kind of sort of vibrant person was there, because somebody who was a wallflower, as I did it, right, wouldn't have been out there. I would have been on the perimeter of the floor. I don't want to cut off Jonathan. Do you have any thoughts? Or should
Yes. I kind of like the second sentence was ignorance was bliss, because it made me think of other sayings like that. And when she talked about, like, the cadaver and the autopsy and dancing, it made me think like you're figuratively dancing on someone's grave. So I thought that was like a nice thing to set up so you could put that in my head.
that is
Thank you.
really nice. Yeah, and so especially when we're doing this fast writing, pardon the word, but a cliche like ignorance is bliss will come right out and it's great. And then in your polishing, do you want to keep it? Sometimes a cliche is the perfect thing to put in there. There's a reason you're using something we're accustomed to. And in this case, I suspect it would stay. But it's something to pay attention to in our writing, right? If you catch a cliche, somebody in one of the writing programs or workshops I went to, like some bigwig writer said, anything you've ever heard of before is a cliche, which is a little bit harsh, but it's an idea to say, hey, say things in new ways, right? Make us see the world in new ways, which is my favorite thing about teaching. Somebody does every creative assignment. I see the world in a new way at least once, and that's why I teach. Well, I thought this was a really roaring start to this. So if you could pick your favorite part of it and figure out, your narrative doesn't have to go in the same direction. I mean, Jonathan doesn't even have to write about divorce if he doesn't want to. Just pick a sentence, any sentence, and see where the diction and syntax from that sentence will take you in these next 6 minutes. You ready to start? Am I ready to start you? On your marks, get set, right. I ran away and now you have like 20 seconds. Sorry. Okay, wrap things up as you can. Someone brought me breakfast, so I'm chewing in your face.
What did you just say?
Someone brought me breakfast, so I'm chewing in your face. Someone being my big guy. Okay. I'm so excited to hear what you all got out of your improv writing turned what you wanted to write.
I'll go first again.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan.
You can't be polite to a parasite. Yes, he was family, but that was exactly what he was. Always so mild-mannered, always so unassuming, no one ever picks up on it. He dropped out of school, he's never worked a job in his life. He doesn't even have any hobbies. At least with a hobby, you could do something productive with it, but he just sits there in his room, watching trashy television and soaking up our parents' money. Now they're gone, and as far as I'm concerned, he's on his own. Some people might say that I'm cruel for doing this to my little brother, but it has to be done. Our parents never could. To behave so meekly and so quietly as if seeking sympathy, they could never see through it. He acted like prey, but he was the predator, and pity was what he used to lure in his victims. It worked on them, but it won't work on me.
Wow. Thoughts?
I like the prey and predator context. It kind of changed, for me, it changed the tone of what you were writing. And I thought that was cool.
I agree. That's what I was thinking too.
And I also love that you picked that particular sentence or term from the
Yeah.
original.
I smiled the second you read it.
Good title for a book.
Yeah. You can't be polite to a parasite. Yeah.
It's really,
I
it's a
also
good,
love, go ahead.
it would be a good self-help book.
I love that you were alliterating all the way through the most important words too: polite, parasite, prey, predator, right? And that felt like an alliterative bookend, which is difficult to do, and you managed it. You were a really slow reveal in a good way. We didn't understand until our parents' money who this parasite was and what the relationship was to the narrator. But I feel like that was being effective. And then I would ask, as you're revising something like this, what do you wish you had in there? So for everybody else who's listening, what else do you wish you knew? You know, he only had 6 minutes. When he goes back to revise, what do you wish was also in there?
Well, just sort of the context, because in my head, this is all someone's monologue, because the parents had died, but the parasite in question hadn't even bothered to attend the funeral. So yeah, so that's the context for this.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and with that context, so when we write, we're dealing with, you know, a story and a situation, right? And the situation you have here is this parasite eating off the parents who didn't care about them enough to even attend their funeral, right? And then as you keep pushing in the story, some of the places, because they both have to exist to be effective, right? So some of the places you could really push the story is to get us down now into sensory detail. Maybe put us literally into scene and have them talking to each other. Or if they're not talking, have the character who's, like washing his hands of everything, maybe be standing in the house and letting the sort of list of items that create the setting help then give you the emotional backdrop. Maybe the parents had photographs of both brothers, but more of the parasite. I don't know. But whatever it takes to help us see sort of the spider's lair or whatever that the brother had created, and the ways that the other brother is like, this is not me, and I am not going to help this continue. And so that way we have maybe smells or, the comfort of an old home, but the way that setting would also then do work for you in the situation between the two brothers. That's what I think. But it's easy for me. I don't have to write it.
Yeah, sorry, my sister's kind of blaring music really loudly right now, so I had to mute myself a couple times, but thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And we can't hear it. So that's good, right?
Yeah, no worries. I've got my toddler making his own noise in the background.
Which we also can't hear. I'm so impressed. I kicked my dogs out. They started whining the second you guys started writing, and I was like, that's it, you're out. Okay, does anybody want to go next?
I'll go second again.
Sure. The people who have been writing longer, I get it. The people who haven't been writing as much, I still want to hear what you wrote. Unless you don't want to write or read it. Okay, Sarah.
Cassie tripped clumsily over the brush lane on the floor. Fear rushed coldly through her body as she fell. Not only fear of getting hurt, but fear of getting caught. They weren't supposed to have hair products in the living room. There were so many rules. Don't ride in cars with teen drivers. Go to bed at a certain time. Don't say hate or cuss. Eat the food in front of you or not at all. Never talk back or question anything. Having rules for the first time in her life, Cassie didn't always remember all of them, but she readily acknowledged that they somehow made her feel safe. Until one day. Casey remembered once questioning a guest on why they had told her to do a certain thing. That questioning had gotten back to Darcy. When Darcy got home from work that day, she told Cassie, "If you'd questioned me like that, you'd be picking yourself up off the floor." A tiny seed of fear replaced the mustard seed of faith.
That's an amazing last line.
Yes, the last one, definitely.
Did you read that? Did you read that last line one more time?
A tiny seed of fear replaced the mustard seed of faith.
A mustard seed of faith.
Faith.
Of what?
Faith.
Faith, right?
Yeah.
Like FAITH. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Nice. That's
The last line was really great. I sort of wish I thought of that, but the line I liked was the line about rules making her feel safe, because that sort of goes to show what rules are to people. Rules are either this annoyance that I want to actively break, or it's something that gives me structure, and when it's not there, I'm not quite sure what to do. So that was actually my favorite line in the story.
I liked that one too, because like you were talking about how she knows that there are all these crazy rules she has to follow. And I'm here thinking, poor kid. And then you say that they actually make her feel safe, which kind of made me look at it in a different perspective. Because if I understand correctly from what I've heard about Cassie is that she's abused. So I imagine that suffering trauma as a child, she needs some kind of structure, some kind of stability to offer a sense of comfort. So I guess like rules, for example, even if they hurt her in a way, they also provide that structure that children need. Or that was my interpretation.
Thank you.
and I will add that I don't know for sure everything, but I don't know for sure that Cassie has been abused, though I suspect so. But she's in the foster system, which explains why the two kids are lucky in the previous version of this, because the kids are actually, this is their parents' house. And I keep getting confused because in a different story, Darcy's a good person. So I can't picture Darcy knocking Cassie to the ground, but I'm taking it I'm rolling with it because when you're making fiction, people get to change. So I don't want to jump on top of Kay if you have something to say. She's okay. Okay. So what I wanted to say that was my favorite thing about this is tied into what everybody else has said, which is Jonathan and Katey appreciating the way that the rules make her feel safe. And then I love the way that that safety is tied to the mustard seed of faith. And that's the thread that if I were you, I'd keep working on when you go back and edit this, because I think there's an equivalence between feeling safe and having faith. And then being told you're going to get knocked down if you talk to the person caring for you that way, of course, brings back in the fear. And you had put fear early on, something about fear in the adverb coldly, because she was afraid they were going to get caught. So she's learning how to follow rules, and she has fear about not following the rules. But then you explain to us what the rules mean to her. And so that fear is sort of a healthy fear. And instead you have a different kind of fear that shows up at the end, because she was just beginning to understand how this worked for her. And then she, gets told she's going to come to harm if she doesn't do better. And that's different than being afraid of being caught. That's like more real fear, right? So I don't know how you would sort that out and sort of keep sussing out the difference between those kinds of fears and the relationship between faith and safety, but you've definitely got something going on in there. And it's fun and exciting, and good luck.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, would either Katey or Kay like to read?
Had writer's block. I have something really short. It's
Please,
just,
if you would, read the short thing.
okay, it's just didn't work. Maybe it's the time. I don't know.
It is early.
She weakly agreed that she needed time off, that she needed time to heal. But how would she ever heal from the loss? Some things just don't get better. Time heals, they say. How does that work, really? Do a few sunsets and sunrises take pain away? It was kind of them, really, to give her this sabbatical. Resting was not something that came naturally for her. Being solitary, quiet, and tranquil sounds lovely to some, but to her it seemed like torture. She did not do well living inside her head.
That's amazing. Stop saying you don't have anything. You don't get to say that anymore.
Okay, all right, thanks.
What are your thoughts, everybody?
I loved it. I liked listening to the character contemplating on their situation and reflecting on how something that this character really needs actually feels like torture to them. And it makes me wonder, okay, so how are they going to heal if it feels like torture? And I don't know. I kind of want to know how this goes, the sabbatical.
Yeah.
The escapism aspect of it really got to me, where you really need to rest, but that's almost the worst thing you need, because you don't want to be alone with your own thoughts. Because it just kind of reminded me of a period where I was working this really miserable job, and I was low-key depressed, but I never wanted to take time off, because then if I did, I'd think about how miserable I was.
Yeah.
So it's just like this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Very
Right.
nice.
That aspect of her not wanting to be left alone with her own thoughts is really relatable. I think everybody has experienced that at some point.
Sarah, do you want to add anything?
I think too that like you took a cliche but picked it apart and kind of redefined like how do we measure time passing, and I like that.
Yeah, and that same question that shows up in so much of what we're reading, what happens and how do we do things with grief? And, does it ever go away? And, it doesn't, right? You just learn how to fit it into your life. And we're witnessing this character start that journey. Start, where do you fit grief into your life? And how do you keep having sunrises and sunsets and have grief have a place in that? And so if this were a longer piece, I would have anticipated that this paragraph-ish that you wrote would be that reflective moment in between some deeply in-scene places where we're having dialogue, we're having sensory detail, we're really in there with someone. And then, you know, when they're like, hey, you know, the dialogue would be like, you're going to need to take a bit of a sabbatical, and Sabrina over here is going to take over for a while, because that would be a cheerleader name, right? And so we would have witnessed all that, and then we'd move into her head like that, and we wouldn't stay any longer in there, because that's about as long as we can be inside somebody's head without being like, give us some sort of action. I mean, and if you were doing this in a larger piece, even in the middle of that, maybe you would have her walking home from cheerleading practice, or at home, but making herself something to eat, or, you know, cleaning her room, or doing the things people do to self-soothe. Because even when we're by ourselves, I think the pandemic, when we isolated, was a great opportunity for us to see what we do when we can't interact with many other people. And so, you know, whatever it is that she does to be so alone, like she is inside her head, and not able to express that to anybody else yet either, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to really
I could write quite a bit about what goes on inside somebody's head. That's something
right.
I've done a lot of, but it's the sort of the interaction, the dialogue, the action that is a little harder for me personally to write.
Right. And that's exactly, so I think, I know when I was, you know, more at the beginning phases of my writing, I felt really good about monologue, you know, because that's where I am inside my own head all the time. And that's why I was talking about how do you make techniques to make monologue bearable? Because when you're reading like a writer, right, pay attention to other people's writing, and when they put us in somebody's head, watch the ways they make that bearable, because we're inside our own heads all the time, but we don't love to be inside other people's heads for too long without some relief, like an action beat, or, you know, dialogue showing up, or a sensory detail. And really quick, before we go to Katey's, because Kay's made me think of this, this is a poem called Watching My Friend Pretend Her Heart Isn't Breaking. And it just, your work reminded me of it. And listen to how somebody would do it in poetry. It's really short. Watching my friend pretend her heart isn't breaking. On Earth, just a teaspoon of neutron star would weigh 6 billion tons. 6 billion tons equals the collective weight of every animal on Earth, including the insects, times 3. 6 billion tons sounds impossible until I consider how it is to swallow grief. Just a teaspoon, and one might as well have consumed a neutron star. How dense it is, how it carries inside it the memory of collapse, how difficult it is to move then, how impossible to believe that anything could lift that weight. There are many reasons to treat each other with great tenderness. One is the sheer miracle that we are here together on a planet surrounded by dying stars. One is that we cannot see what anyone else has swallowed. Isn't that beautiful?
Who wrote that?
Rosemary, and Mary's like, if you have a merry day, Merry Christmas. Okay. Rosemary Wahtola, Wahtola, Trommer. And let me see if, I don't know if I can copy this. I sent it to a friend as an image, so let me see if I can paste it in here. I don't think I can. No, I can't. And Trommer is Trommer. I think a lot about grief, you know, because I have the anticipatory grief of my sister being terminally ill. And so when people write about it, you know, it resonates so much with me. And that's what I think when we talk about having a universal theme happening in your work, and another way people talk about that is having high stakes. That's what happens, is you have something in there that's happening to your characters, but it matters to people because they're having similar experiences. And that's the reason writing is so, you know, creates such a response in us, is because you're touching something that we all can universally relate to. As you did, Kay. Yes, you did. Katey, do you want to read what you have? I mean, are you willing to read what you have?
Yes. Yes, I am. Let's
Great.
see. Okay. I was innocent in my clumsy efforts to make sense of things until a peculiar sequence of events revealed the truth by chance. It started with a pigeon. It's not unusual to see pigeons wandering the halls of the apartment building. They fly up the stairwell and get lost in the maze of identical halls and identical doors. So, as you can imagine, it didn't throw me off to encounter a pigeon in front of my apartment. It wouldn't have even been unusual to find it dead, what with Lenny carousing the property. But it wasn't just dead. There it was, the poor little thing, dangling upside down on a red string. It's unusual enough for a stranger, but I know this pigeon all too well.
Wow.
Taking that particular line makes it a lot of fun because it ends in by chance. So it like opens up any completely random thing that you can come up with.
Right.
And so I thought that was really cool. And also, like, as you were reading, I was paying attention to how you read. And I think part of what I hear this time and last time is actually how you read it. Like, I just watched some other authors read their piece and like just kind of observing how they read it. Like, you read it masterfully. Like, the way you read it makes what you write even more beautiful. So kudos.
Thank you.
I can't disagree with that observation, Sarah. That's a great observation. And in fact, just to hop on top of that, because you must have a theater background or something, because you're very comfortable reading. But
Yes.
yeah. But my long-term creative writing teacher, the only one I had until I was in my 40s, actually, he went to school at Columbia, which of course has an amazing program, and they stopped letting him read his work out loud because they said anything you read sounds as if it's amazing, and it's not as amazing as you make it sound. Not you, him. And obviously he's a successful, because he just retired as a full professor of creative writing. But yeah, so just reading well can make all the difference in the world, right?
That's true. That is true.
That's nice. Good observation, Sarah.
Thank you.
What else?
I could imagine walking through those halls, and I think, and seeing, and you talked about seeing a pigeon is no big deal, but then you go into explaining why and everything. But I always like it when someone writes something, you hear something that really kind of puts you there, I can walk through those halls too. I've seen them, I know what it looks like. And so I still want to know more about the pigeon, but yeah, good imagery, or not imagery, I guess, good setting.
Good setting.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, like Kay said, it's very vivid. Like the second you said there's a pigeon in the hall, my skin started crawling, but in a good way, because I just despise birds. So the second I hear that there's a pigeon inside my apartment, I'm moving.
You give the pigeon the keys and run.
Exactly. I'm not living here anymore. So
That's awesome. A quick question for everybody. What is Lenny? No, this is good. What is Lenny? You don't get to tell us, Katey.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Caretaker?
I assume it was a dog or a cat or something.
Yeah, Lenny's got to be a cat, right? Because it wasn't unusual to find dead pigeons considering Lenny. I mean, what I loved is Katey did not have to tell us that Lenny was some sort of predator of birds. And of course, the number one predator of birds is domestic cats in America, right? Which is actually a statistic. Because I want a barn cat and everybody's worried it's going to kill. I'm like, we live on 40 acres, but anyway. So what I wanted to say also, I so agree with the setting. It wouldn't be unusual for a pigeon to be lost in the bays of, did you say anonymous bays or something like that?
Oh, I said apartment buildings are well, they get lost in the maze of identical halls and identical doors.
Right, right. And anonymous might have been a word you could use in that too, but yes, so we can picture it, right? You know, what a big apartment building is like and how a pigeon might end up in there. But what you're doing is you're giving us that setting without saying the hallways were full of, you know, identical bays and whatever. Instead, you're saying, of course, they get lost in a place that looks like this. And that's different than just handing a setting. You're giving us the plot, the circumstances, the situation that the pigeon is in, and the setting is being brought into it without you saying, and here's the setting, right? So that's
Mhm.
really well done. And then
Thank you.
I had this open somewhere and I don't know where it is. The 5 S's. Have we talked about them?
The 5 what?
S's. Sarah's nodding.
S's.
Yeah. I got them from Katey Schultz, and I think I shared them. I know where I can find them. Hold on. You're doing the 5 S's really well, so I'm gonna fly in here and find where I wrote the 5 S's so that you guys can have them. Module 3. It's got to be the journal, right? Please open. It's being a little slow. I've challenged my thing. Okay. So I'm going to put this link in the chat and see if you can follow it. And then I will click. Oh, it's not linked. Okay. Hold on. Because this is important for you to think of. Now, these are oh, come on, Max, for flash fiction, but they're actually true for any kind of fiction that you're writing. So here's the website. And Katey Schultz is this great writer. We actually had her out at the Air Force Academy one time when I taught there as our Generative speaker, and she's really talented. She's in North Carolina. I almost ended the meeting. The 5 S's are setting, where is the action taking place? Situation, what happens to your main character to initiate the action plot? Sensory detail, using all 5 senses. Simile, which is just an S that is figurative language, right? And then shift. And what you had at the end was that amazing shift. We're like tra-la-lying through these, hallways, and there's pigeons, and it might even be dead because of Lenny and how sad. But this one is dangling from a red string in front of her very door. And that is a great inciting incident for us. And in fact, I think I wrote down that it started with a pigeon. When you revise might be the better place to start this. It's such an unusual thing, not much starts with the pigeons. There may be pigeons in the background, but
That's an interesting idea.
Inciting incident. Yeah. So I hope you all got that link to the 5 S's. Those are great things to be thinking of in anything that you're writing. And I, for myself, will go back and actually, remind myself of the 5 S's. I have this website bookmarked, and the video that she goes on it in this website's even better. So, but they list them for me nicely on the website, and then you can watch Katey's video if you want. But nicely done. Okay, nobody gets to say they don't have anything anymore because you all had something every time. This was, for me, a super inspiring morning of writing. For the Reading Like Writer 2 people, Katey and Kay, just keep thinking about syntax and diction and the way that emerged out of having us throw diction at you in the improv writing. And what happens when, you have to add a word that wasn't intentional, right? And so one fun thing that you could do for yourselves as you're writing for future creative responses, you probably already have written for 4, but we do it again in 6 or 7, I don't know when. And so, maybe go pick a bunch of words now, and the next time you have to creatively write, set down the words and go, well, how am I going to put these in there? And they don't have to stay in the end, but it's a way to spice up your writing and put things in there that you didn't think would belong within them. The other thing that you can do is you can, I record these and I put them up on my SNHU video thing. And it's the channel that's generative writing workshops. And you can see anywhere I've said improv, I do this. So you'll get thrown different words. And so you could get in there you know, and do an improv writing if you wanted with the words that I used in a different. Those are all possibilities. Thoughts from an amazing group of talented people?
I just wanted to say, thank you. I always enjoy doing these. It's always interesting to see how people come up with ideas on the spot. It's always interesting to see what comes out of my brain too.
Definitely, definitely. I'm glad you came, Jonathan. You always add something with a cool twist in it. I'm going to be carrying the "it's hard to be polite to a parasite" with me today.
Get it on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Such a great idea. Anything else from all of you? Do you have any questions or?
just
Thanks.
No, I like the just hearing how several of you used the figurative language and so quickly, you know, and that you know, it's a skill. It's a skill you've most likely developed, and it's. I think words are so. I love thinking about words and figuring out words, and you know, just hearing how you can use them is really, it's really good. Something I want to think about more.
But it is like a muscle, right? It's something you
Yeah.
definitely have to exercise. And reading poetry is a great way to get there in short order if you want to practice it daily. Katey, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that first activity with, you know, using the words that you gave us. I'd never done something like that before, so it really got me thinking about my writing in a totally new way. And I think it's helpful because I think we all get stuck sometimes when we're writing and we're like, this word doesn't sound right. And we're really trying so hard to find the right word. And this exercise was the opposite of that, where we have the word, but we have to try to find a way to use it. So I think it's kind of like using your left and right brain together. If you do both kinds of exercises, I imagine that we'll all get a lot better at using words and choosing the right words for whatever we're writing.
Yeah, I love that because I feel like it frees you up to say, okay, what's the most ridiculous word I can think of right now for what I'm trying to say, instead of limiting yourself to how are the ways I know this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you know, I'm going to use, I'm trying to find something in my environment, wire fences, you know, but somehow that could somehow end up being a non-cliche figurative language was the best thing you can pull from this, I think. Anything from you, Sarah?
That first one, I think that's probably my favorite thing that we do. But it also causes me the most anxiety. But it is fun because it does break you out, and it feels like it uses parts that you don't normally use. Because I mean, none of those words, I mean, I don't use intonation very often, but the rest of them are I don't know, common is the right word, but like not scholarly necessarily.
Right.
But I wouldn't necessarily have included them or come up with them.
Yeah.
So I think that's, yeah, I call it titillating.
Yeah,
No, that's a good description.
even witnessing you all use them, my brain starts sparking, right? I mean, I just feel like everything comes alive, and I'm energized now in a way that I wasn't when we started.
Yeah, that was a good point. I teach English as a foreign language, so I use the word intonation a lot, actually, but I always use it in a very literal sense, helping my students improve their intonation. So when that word came up, I was like, oh gosh, I've never used this figuratively or creatively. And next time I'll be more familiar with this exercise, and I'll try better to use more figurative language.
And next time I typically will have just a normal prompt for you. But again, you can find my other ones that I've done. I probably have done 4 or 5 of these already that are on video. So you can always fast forward to the part where I'm writing and throwing up words. Although one of them, you'll have to laugh because we just ended up writing longer because for the first, I don't know, like 3 minutes into it, I forgot to throw words. Sarah gets to be my, you know, backup when she's like, are you going to record today? Are you going to offer us any words? I mean, she said it nicer than that, but you know, it's just too late.
Sarah gets a little badge of authority.
No, it's like the last one, it was like, who comes up with these words? Like, it was so funny.
Anyway, it was such a pleasure to work with you all this morning, and I love doing this with you, even though, you know, I have no requirement to, but I just think it's fun to have a chance to have minds come together, and the things we do together in these things, they're always better than doing them by yourself.
Definitely.
Something about, well, Sarah and I have both gone to this person who's not going to do this anymore, but she does a morning meditation, and then you write some poetry briefly at the end of it. And one morning, the city Reykjavik ended up in my poem, and I was like, ha, nobody's going to come up with that. And no kidding, Peggy, the person who runs it, had Reykjavik in her poem. And we hadn't talked about it. It hadn't been in the news. So there is something weird that happens with our minds when we show up together. And I'm glad that the weird turned out great today. So.
Yeah, I appreciate this. There used to be a writers group in the town where I live in, but because of the pandemic, the group just kind of closed and dispersed. So this is my opportunity to work with other people with writing. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. And that's why I run that Slack channel, in the hopes that, and I invite people from Slack and whatever to keep a community going, you know, have people, even when we don't live close to other writers, as I don't. I'm 25 miles from the closest grocery store. So, you know, you are my writers. Anyway, thank you so much for such a great morning and for making it a half an hour early. I appreciate it. The next time we do it, should be back to 9 p.m. I mean, a.m. So I hope you can make it next time too.
The next time, October 1st?
That's the plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I'm not sure if I'm around for the 2 weeks after that. I think I am. So yeah, the next one should be October 1st. I will definitely send out a reminder and let you know.
Thank
Yay.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Bye.